just for you, love, and it can be yours. Pretty loving, baby. Give me pretty loving, honey. Keep on loving. This world were mine, I'd make you a king. If this world were mine.
I do want to start off with a trigger warning. This video is not for you if you are easily triggered, especially by very traumatic things. Like, I've done my fair share of traumatic videos on this channel, but this one, I don't know, it tugged at my heart a little differently and made me quite emotional because, wow, 24 is not only so young to die, but the way in which she died, the manner and how her life went. Tammi Terrell's story is truly, truly one of the most heartbreaking stories I have ever done on this channel. We're going to talk about her childhood. We're going to talk about it all, actually. Motown, Hollywood, just Motown in general. That's something else. And James Brown. I am truly disturbed and disgusted. I can never look at James Brown the same ever again. We're going to talk about all these men that watched this woman suffer and did nothing about it until her death at 24. But first, hey friend, welcome to my channel, Crane Allude, where we deep dive and break down the most iconic stars through history. If you're not yet subscribed, please be sure to do so. And if you're already subscribed, please turn on your notification bell so you never miss an upload. Now, without further ado, let's get into this video. Let's start with her childhood. Thomasina Winfred Montgomery was born in Philadelphia to Jenny Graham and Thomas Montgomery. She was born on April 29th, 1945. Jenny, her mother, was an actress, and Thomas was a barbershop owner and local politician. And according to her sister, their mother was mentally ill. Terrell was the older of two siblings, and according to the unsung documentary, her sister Ludi said her parents thought Terrell would be a boy, and therefore she would be named after her father. Tammi was really, really intelligent. She was an honor student in high school and went on to get a pre-med scholarship at the University of Pennsylvania. She was enrolled to piano and dancing lessons when she was 3 years old because her parents saw how lively and energetic she was. She began to sing in churches and talent shows and was a hit in her community. But amidst it all, everything was not roses and butterflies. Tammi had a troubled relationship with her mother, who was mentally ill because she was in and out of hospitals due to depression, and things took a turn for the worse when Tammi, at 11 years young, was violently and forcefully touched and brutalized by 3 older and stronger boys. They robbed her of her innocence in every way imaginable, which left her bruised and scarred mentally and physically. This was extremely traumatic for Tammi because the boys never suffered any consequences for their actions, even though Tammi spoke up. She was able to identify the boys to the police, but the police department didn't really care to do anything about it. The case was swept under the rug. During that era, the police departments thought it was a waste of time and resources anyway to use their resources for cases like these on a black woman. Granted, she was not a woman. She was only 11 years old and a child. To them, it just wasn't a priority compared to a white girl. This was all a dark lesson for Tammi to learn at such a young age. After this incident, Tammi's whole personality changed. She went from energetic to more mellow and tried her best to stay out the way. The fact that this was how her innocence was taken and this was how she was introduced to intimacy, it would forever change Tammi's view and idea of love for the worse and play a role in how she would later pick her suitors, because she just seemed to attract violent men. But it's because that's what she knew. That's how she was introduced to this, and she somehow, unfortunately, equated violence to love, and that's what she was worth. In the 50s, there was no therapy or resources for victims, and even her own family didn't really know how to handle the situation. Tammi had to just bottle it up and endure. But as she developed into her teen years, people did become a little judgmental and critical of Tammi because after such a traumatic event, they expected her to hate men and to avoid them like the plague, but she grew to prefer the audience of men and love them. We now know, due to advancement in the knowledge of mental health and trauma, that this is often the case for victims. They could either stay, shy, timid, or recluse, or become socially extroverted and more sensually available. But the lack of education during that era, of course, made people view this in a critical, lens. She became extroverted and once again became a bubbly woman full of life as she entered into her teen years, unafraid of what the world would throw at her. She also became promiscuous and had many male suitors, but around this time, she began to have intense headaches also. While it was not thought to be of significance at the time, they thought, it's just headaches. Family members later stated that these headaches might have been related to her later diagnosis of brain cancer. Terrell's journey began at Germantown High School in Philadelphia, but it was far from a typical teenage experience. In 1960, she was discovered by the legendary Luther Dixon, who saw potential in her and signed her to the One Scepter of Records under the name Tammi Montgomery. She recorded the sultry ballad If You See Bill and laid down demos for the iconic girl group the Shirelles. But after a single release, Terrell was off the label, proving that the road to stardom was anything but smooth. Her luck changed when she crossed paths with the King of Soul himself, James Brown. After impressing him, she signed a contract and dived into the chaos of his Rev concert, providing backup vocals. In 1962, 17-year-old Terrell became involved in a DV relationship with James Brown, who was 30 at the time. She was 17, he was 30. He definitely did his best to attract her in the beginning, showering her with gifts, attention, and money. But once she let her guard down, James Brown became very controlling and wanted to know everything that was going on in Tammi's life. He then began to beat her publicly. Alan Lee said, and I quote, "I saw James beat her butt in Atlanta, Georgia until she was too weak to fall." David Butts, a dancer with the show, recalled Tammi going on stage after a beating from Brown, saying she had a song called If You See Bill, and she'd be up there singing it with a black eye, end quote. Butts also recalls James Brown pulling Tammi Terrell out of the car on the side of the road and slapping her, all because she knew he liked hot sauce and took some from the hotel and put it on the coat of her mink coat for him. She just got him some hot sauce, thinking she's doing a good thing, but he was annoyed by that and in the middle of the road pulled her out the car and slapped her. Bobby Bennett said he saw Brown hit Terrell 3 times with a hammer outside of a hotel in Washington, D.C. Though people like to say David Ruffin was the one that hit her with the hammer, it was stated that it was James Brown. I can't even believe I can't. Also, James Brown sensually took advantage of Tammi. He took a umbrella and ruptured her vaginal lining. He just did what he did with that umbrella, and by the time it came out of her, it was soaked in blood. I know I told you guys trigger warning. I know. Unfortunately, that's the story, and I feel it's important to say it like it is because, I was a little conflicted in doing this video. Not really conflicted. It's like, how could you support someone like James Brown after something like this? A lot of these artists are really talented. They know how to sing, but you do ask yourself, how do you support someone after something like this? And these stories are not stated like this. They're very beautified or, downplayed a lot. When people tell these stories in media, they'll tell you, yeah, he hit her, he beat her, he had a way with beating women, he was aggressive, but it won't show you just how brutal. I can't even imagine with the umbrella. Tammi's younger sister, Ludi Montgomery, alluded to this in a biography she wrote about her sister entitled My Sister Tammi, and it has been mentioned in other books that discussed Motown. Additionally, Ludi stated that James Brown had beat Tammi so bad she had to get her teeth capped, like he broke her teeth. She endured for so long until the worst incident happened. One night on the road in 1963, Terrell left Brown after he beat her for not watching his entire performance and leaving early. He beat her for a good 15 minutes with full force. Bobby Bennett, former member of the famous Flames, witnessed the incident. He said, and I quote, "He beat Tammi Terrell terribly. She was bleeding, shedding blood, broken teeth, and everything. He beat her like she was a man. Tammi left him because she didn't want her butt whipped," said Bennett. And he beat her from the stage like he got off from the stage, beat her from the stage all the way down to the basement of the dressing room. 15 minutes, just dragging, kicking. Can you imagine? So James Brown did this publicly, and no one came to Tammi's defense. This, of course, reminded her of her previous trauma and how the police and figures of authority in her life did nothing. All those grown men saw James and Ruffin abuse Tammi, yet didn't intervene or step to do something for her. Was this all she was worth? I'm happy she mustered the courage to leave Brown despite the money and the glamour that came with staying with him, but this definitely played a role on her self-esteem. So she went back home after that because her parents left her to go on the road with James Brown, though they tried to say, oh, y'all trusted strangers with y'all young daughter, even though they said they trusted Gertie, which was working with James Brown as assistant or whatever. But that was still a stranger. Y'all didn't grow up with this person. Y'all don't know this person. Y'all trusted y'all young child with her. So I hate when parents say that, well, there was someone on the road we trusted. No, you can't trust anyone with your young child. So I never have sympathy, empathy for that, period. But when she went back home in her suitcase, her family described her as looking worn out from being on tour with him, just worn out. Like she just went through it. Like she looked just battered, a shell of herself. And as she was unpacking her suitcase, there was a silk blue dress that James Brown had got for her to wear, and the blue dress was soaked in blood. I just can't even imagine. When she left, she didn't even try to clean up her clothes or anything. She just packed all her stuff, and her family witnessed that. Her dad, of course, was described as being devastated, like they didn't know, but I can't imagine. In 1961, she tried her hand at forming a girls group called the Sherries. However, her reign was short-lived. By late 1962, she was booted from the group due to fiery disputes. The Sherries moved on without her, leaving Terrell to navigate the tumultuous waters of the music industry alone. And in 1963, she recorded I Cried, her first real taste of success with Brown's Try Me Records. The single climbed its way onto the Billboard Hot 100, peaking at a modest 99. It was a start, but Terrell craved more. She later signed with Checker Records and released a duet, If I Would Marry You, featuring Jimmy Ratcliffe, but much to her dismay, the song flopped, leading her to announce a semi-retirement from music. Taking a step back, Terrell enrolled at the prestigious University of Pennsylvania, majoring in pre-med, a baffling pivot for a woman with dreams of stardom, but the call of the stage was too strong to resist. Jerry Butler, a renowned soul singer, coaxed her back into the spotlight, promising she could balance her studies while performing in nightclubs across the country. In a twist of fate, it was during a performance at the 20 Grand Club in Detroit in April 1965 that her life took a dramatic turn. Motown CEO Berry Gordy was in the audience and immediately recognized Terrell's star power. He made her a promise that would change everything. He would sign her to Motown. On her 20th birthday, April 29, 1965, she sealed the deal and officially became part of Motown family. Her first single, I Can't Believe You Love Me, shot into R&B Top 40, quickly followed by the infectious Come On and See Me, but Terrell wasn't stopping there. 1966 would prove to be a monumental year as she recorded two future classics, Stevie Wonder's All I Do Is Think About You, and the Isley Brothers' This Old Heart of Mine Is Weak For You. With her talent finally recognized, she joined the iconic Motown Rev, sharing the stage with legends like The Temptations, and finally began to carve her name in the annals of music history. Now let's talk about David Ruffin's. During the electrifying Motown Rev in 1966, Terrell found herself embroiled in a steamy affair with none other than David Ruffin, the charismatic lead singer of The Temptations. But much like James Brown, he did everything to impress Tammi. There was even an instance where the band was on the road, and instead of riding in the bus with the guys, he got a limo for him and Tammi to ride in solo. It's been stated by several people who knew them that Tammi Terrell was the female version of David Ruffin. In the book, Ain't Too Proud to Beg, The Troubled Lives and Enduring Souls of the Temptations, there's an interesting quote in there that said, and I quote, David got major P-U-S-S-Y. Let me tell you, Tammi Terrell was major P-U-S-S-Y. Of course, she also was an accident waiting to happen. She was wild. She'd been turned on to substances, hard substances, Coca-Cola, if you catch my drift. She got David hooked on substances also. That's a fact. Look, David was an accident waiting to happen too, but she got him into all his destructive behaviors. Him roughing her up, I'm not making excuses for that, but it was a factor of what Tammi was, end quote. Their romance was sizzling, and it seemed like a lot of people was blaming Tammi as we get into how he took advantage of her, put his hands on her, but people were blaming Tammi. I don't know what it was with people that had little to no compassion for her, because even her own sister said in the Unsung documentary that, oh, she held her own when she would get into fights with David Ruffins. Like, what? What you mean she held her own? I don't know. So a lot of people was also commenting on her promiscuity as like an excuse for the men putting hands on her and stuff, like disregarding completely the trauma that she endured as a child and how that could have played a role in her, the lack of people coming to her defense. And they were very vulgar about it. I don't know. Just makes me so sad. I don't know. Their romance was sizzling though, her and David. And it didn't take long before David surprised her with a marriage proposal that made hearts race. But the excitement turned to scandal when Terrell announced their engagement on stage, only to discover that Ruffin was already a married man. Behind the smooth facade of the Motown scene, Ruffin had a wife, 3 children, and an ongoing affair with another woman in Detroit. So he was not a good guy. Let's just say that. The stormy revelation sent shockwaves through Terrell's life, and soon their passionate romance developed into chaos, fueled by Ruffin's substance use and putting hands on her. The couple's explosive arguments became a regular occurrence, and Terrell later confided to Ebony magazine in 1969 that the emotional turmoil from their relationship contributed to her debilitating headaches that plagued her after each fight. The relationship took a dark turn in 1967 when Terrell finally put her foot down after an incident that would mark the end of their tumultuous romance. In a fit of rage, Ruffin beat her in the head with his motorcycle helmet, an act of violence that shocked many. He also beat her on the head again with a steel chair. This, of course, made her migraines even worse. There were also rumors that he even beat the puppy that he got Tammi when he had a fit of rage. He got her a dog, a pet. He got into a fit of rage and allegedly beat that puppy terribly in front of Tammi to terrorize her. So Berry Gordy and the rest of the Motown execs in the studios knew about this tumultuous relationship. No one stepped in to help her. No one looked out for her. No one provided resources for her. They kind of just turned a blind eye, which is why her family, when she ended up eventually dying, didn't want none of them to come to the funeral, because it was like, this was public. Everything that happened to her was always so public, with no one coming to her defense. I'm not the strongest person in the world. I can imagine what that would do to my psyche if no one ever came to my defense every time these traumatic things would happen to me. I can't even imagine, even if you are a strong person, what that would do to you, your self-esteem. I don't know. But she did have one heartwarming friendship in the industry, and maybe that was because Marvin Gaye also had all his issues with the industry, and I did a wonderful video for Marvin Gaye. If you guys are interested, I'll pin that in the end cards and in the comments also to check out. But that was her one true friend in the industry. In early 1967, Motown had a brilliant idea to pair the sensational Terrell with the smooth Marvin Gaye for a series of sultry duets. During their recording sessions, Marvin would later admit that he had no idea just how incredibly talented Terrell truly was until they started harmonizing together. Their first tracks were laid down separately, but everything changed when they came together for the iconic Ashford and Simpson hit Ain't No Mountain High Enough, and I love that song. When the song dropped in the spring of 1967, it became an instant sensation, rocketing to number 19 on Billboard Hot 100 and hitting number 3 on the R&B charts. Terrell was suddenly thrust into the spotlight, and her star power was undeniable, but that was just the beginning. Their follow-up, Your Precious Love, was an even bigger triumph, soaring to number 5 on the pop charts and number 2 on the R&B charts. The duo was on fire. By the end of 1967, Terrell and Gaye delivered yet another top 10 gem with If I Could Build My Whole World Around You, which peaked at number 10 on the pop charts and again reached number 2 on the R&B charts. The B-side, If This World Were Mine, was penned by Marvin himself, also found its way into the charts, albeit as a modest hit at number 68 pop and number 27 R&B. Gaye later revealed that this track was one of Tammi's personal favorites, a testament to their undeniable chemistry. All four of these scorching hits made it into the first duet album, United, which was released in the summer of 1967. As their fame skyrocketed, the pair began performing together, and Terrell emerged as a vocal powerhouse, inspiring the shy and reserved Marvin, who had always loathed live performances. Together, they lit up television screens with their electrifying performances, captivating audiences everywhere. Their undeniable talent didn't go unnoticed. In 1970, they were crowned the #1 R&B duo in Cashbox magazine's annual year-end survey. Marvin adored Tammi, and when she passed away, he was never the same. He was very devastated by her death. Though there were rumors that the two were lovers, both denied these claims and loved each other like siblings. Marvin was married at the time, and Tammi was still involved with Ruffin, and he was the only one invited to her funeral, from the family, because they knew he was the only true friend she had. But let's talk about the end of her life, her last years. As Terrell's star was rising, the migraines and headaches that had plagued her since childhood began to rear their ugly heads with alarming frequency. Despite the pain that gnawed at her, she put on a brave face for her friends and insisted she was fit to perform. But the facade crumbled on October 14, 1967, during a performance of Your Precious Love with Marvin Gaye at Hampton Sydney College in Farmville, Virginia. In a shocking moment that left the audience gasping, Terrell collapsed right into Gaye's arms on stage. She fainted. After her dramatic fall, she returned home only to be met with devastating news. Doctors found a malignant tumor on the right side of her brain. On January 13, 1968, she underwent brain surgery at Graduate Hospital in Philadelphia, a harrowing ordeal that would change the course of her life. Once she recovered from her surgery, Terrell returned to Hitsville Studios in Detroit and recorded the hit You're All I Need to Get By. Both this track and Ain't Nothing Like the Real Thing, which is my favorite from them, Ain't Nothing Like the Real Thing, soared to #1 on the R&B charts, fueling her optimism. But the joy was short-lived. Her health took a nosedive as her tumor worsened, leading to more surgeries. By 1969, Terrell had to retire from live performances as her doctors advised her against it due to her condition. Motown released her first and only solo album, Irresistible, in early 1969, but the sad truth was that Terrell was too ill to promote the recordings. This album featured no new songs. All the tracks had been recorded earlier and were just gathering dust, like they were shelved, but because they saw, hey, she's gonna die soon, let's just take advantage of that, put an album out to make money. That's how the records were, and Marvin Gaye ended up speaking about that too. All her shelved songs, they quickly rushed to put into an album to release. And behind the scenes, the production of Terrell and Gaye's third album, Easy, became a hot topic of controversy. Reports circulated that Terrell had become so ill that she couldn't record, prompting Motown to call in Valerie Simpson, who had a very similar voice as her, to be the substitute. So Marvin Gaye himself later claimed this move was merely another money-making scheme on Berry Gordy's part, exposing the cutthroat nature of the industry. Like, she couldn't sing, let's have somebody dubbed her voice to this song. So when someone dies, everybody goes and rush to listen to their music, blah, 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 In late 1969, Terrell made her final public appearance at the Apollo Theater, where Marvin Gaye was performing. The moment Gaye laid eyes on her, he rushed to her side. She was all sick on a wheelchair and stuff. He rushed to her side, and together they sang You're All I Need to Get By. I love that song, igniting the crowd into a frenzy that ended with a thunderous standing ovation. But it was bittersweet. By early 1970, Terrell was confined to a wheelchair, struggling with blindness. She had lost her vision and hair loss and weighing only 93 pounds. Following her 8th and final operation on January 21st, 1970, Terrell slipped into a coma. She passed away on March 16 at just 24 years old. Her funeral took place at the James Methodist Church in Philadelphia, where emotions ran high. At the time of her death, she was engaged to Dr. Ernest Ernie Garrett, who was really good to her. He really loved her. So at least she, got to experience love in the end. The physician who cared for her during her final days, her illness. And in a poignant moment, Marvin Gaye delivered a heartfelt eulogy while You're All I Need to Get By played softly in the background. However, Terrell's mother, Jenny, was not in a forgiving mood. She barred everyone from Motown from attending the funeral except for Gaye, and I agree with her mother, who she considered Terrell's closest friend. Jenny harbored deep resentment towards the label, blaming them for failing to protect her daughter from the chaos of her relationship with David Ruffin. Just all of it. Terrell was laid to rest at Mount Lawn Cemetery in Sharon Hill, Pennsylvania, but the ripples of her tragic death didn't stop there. Gaye reportedly never fully recovered from the loss of Terrell. He really spiraled into a depression. Several biographers noted that her death plunged him into a dark pit of depression, and then he started to, medicate with substances. The pain of her absence deeply influenced his music also, culminating in the release of his classic album, What's Going On, which is the best album, one of the best albums ever, in 1971. A reflective work that tackled profound themes, social themes. And it was an album he fought to release. I encourage you guys to go see the Marvin Gaye video that I did. He fought to release that album, and it was his most profound to me. It talked about what was going on really in society at that time. He really wanted he wanted to have a life of purpose, inspired after her death. And the album was a haunting tribute to Terrell's legacy for him. So even deeper meaning. The music industry lost a shining star that day, but the scandal and sorrow surrounding her life would linger long after. And yeah, this is truly, I don't know. This is really sad, guys. That really bothered me. 24 is so young. It's so young. When I was 24, I couldn't even imagine. And to lose your vision, to be wheelchair bound, 8 surgeries, to be publicly humiliated constantly by men like this. No one come to your defense. What happened to her at 11 years old? I just can't imagine. That's such a life. And I do want a biopic on her life. I think that would be amazing. She reminds me a lot, like Taraji P favors her a lot. Taraji P reminds me of her so much. And unfortunately, because of all that Tammi Terrell endured, she aged before her time. So, I believe Taraji P would do a very great biopic on her life. And I hope Hollywood gets on that, make that happen, because her story deserved to be told and expose these men in the industry. It did lead me to have this conversation with myself. Like, so many men in the industry are always accused of DV. What is going on? What is going on? So many videos I do, it was just so normal. These stories get more and more tragic through time as I do them. I don't know, I guess the older I get, to see how young they are, like, I don't know, when you're 16, 24 don't seem so young, right? But as you get older, 24 is like, wow, you're a baby. You're a baby. I can't even imagine. Leave some flower emojis in the comments for her. Give her flowers. Leave some kind comments and comment below who else would you guys like a video from. I love you guys so much. Thank you for tuning in. If you like the music you're listening to, the link is in the description. Also, go check out that Marvin Gaye video. I'll see you in the next one.